Hey, ding dongs, we're here in a different fucking spot because we're doing shit. We're working fucking tits. We're here with a review. A couple of you have asked for us, like, when are you going to review this album? And you're watching it right now. This is Chelsea Grin with their new album, Ashes to Ashes. It came out July 8th. And, what's this, their third album?
Yeah.
First full length since 2011's My Damnation, and now they've also added, as many of you have known because it's happened a while ago, Jason Richardson, previously of Born of Osiris. And they did an EP called Evolve with him, which was a pretty solid EP, and now they're putting out their first full length with this guy. There's other guys in the band too, but he's the biggest one. And we're here to
Make it sound like the wiener size is the biggest one.
we're here to discuss this. Literally.
You want me to go first?
Yeah, that's usually how it goes.
Yeah. So I sat down to listen to this album because Tyler said yesterday that, okay, we're going to review it tomorrow. We're going to have a couple albums to review. So I'm like, alright, I'll sit down and get this one out of the way first. And it's... People, like, have requested it. It's sort of like a... It makes me feel insulted. Like, why would they do such a thing to me? To request that I have to listen to this. So I start the album off, and Playing With Fire, they released that song already. I've listened to it, but I listened to it anyway. I'm like, to start off the album, being the first taste of this band, this album that I've had in a little while, Playing With Fire, I'm like, it's a catchy song, a little bit. It's okay to start off the album. No, it's not the greatest song ever, but it could get better from here. Second song in, and I'm like, already thinking this is like the third or fourth breakdown where they've had where it's too slow to headbang to, and it's too slow to be interested in, and it's that kind of breakdown where they just let it ring out, and it's just too slow to do anything to except swing your arms around like a monkey, and it's not even like that, it's just like, it feels like they just hit a note and they let it ring out forever until it dies off, and it just...
What Mountain Dew?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Stuff gives you brain tumors and stuff.
Hey, fuck you!
What was it? Third song in, and it's just kind of like I was taking notes like throughout each song into the album. Third song in, I'm like, I'm not too impressed by it. I'm not feeling as though it's an album that truly speaks to me, or I'm like, basically, like I said, I'm impressed by it. Then I get to Nightmares. It started off cool, but then into the album or into the song, I'm like, it just kind of loses me. And by that point, I'm starting to see a theme there. Then you get to Illuminate. It's such a disappointing song to me. You think it has this build up at the beginning. You think it's going to start out fast. You think it has like this momentum to it, and it goes to a breakdown. And then it goes fast, like kind of oddly placed fast for like a couple of seconds, like not even 5 seconds, and it goes back to a breakdown. And it has some good, some good stuff, good like leads and stuff to it, but not much else in the song. And I listened to like 20 seconds of Sellout, and I'm like, this is the worst song I've ever listened to. I'm not even going to bother. Just by the title of the song, I know what the meaning is going to be in it, and I don't want to, And by this point, I'm starting to think it's kind of weird how it's just a thought that it's kind of strange how there's a common theme within the lyrics there. There's this common message, if you will, is lyrically, be who you are, be yourself. Don't conform, but just be who you are, be your original self, and it doesn't sound much like that to me. They could be their self, but if they're being their self, it's a little disappointing to me because it doesn't sound like they're being their self. It sounds like they're being a better version of another band, and you know what I'm talking about. But by that point, I'm thinking, okay, I'm sick of these messages, if you will, in the song, and then I keep going. Waste Away, it was an okay song. It kind of reminded me in ways of the last song of the EP.
Don't ask, don't tell.
Yeah, like in the sense that it's, you know, has that nice feeling to it and everything. It has that gentleness to it. But what really pissed me off about that song is finally get to a song on the album where I'm like, okay, I can kind of listen to this in a way, but it starts to shine to me. But then at the end, one thing that really pissed me off is I'm not, historically in music, I'm not a solo guy. I can like a nice solo and everything, but they couldn't find anything better to put underneath that solo at the end of Waste Away other than a breakdown, and it's the same style, same rhythm of breakdown that they've used throughout the album. Yeah, and I'm thinking, you know, you ruin a solo that way. It could have, it's after this kind of emotional part where Alex is, you know, yelling about something, you know, and it has this like nice feeling to it, and you think it's going to bust out into like a solo, and it really just kills the mood where they go with a breakdown instead of anything else. Like, it just fit better with it, and it's just very disappointing, and it ruined what could have been a kind of a neat song that shined through this album. First part of the instrumental was cool. The second part, I'm like, yeah, you know, it's not bad. It kind of had some groove towards the end, but you know, by that point, I'm just like, you know, okay, I'm kind of done here. I'm just gonna skip ahead to the last song on the album because I've already listened to whatever, Angels Don't Shit or whatever, something like that, and whatever the other song was, Letters. I listened to that. And so I'm just like, all right, I'll skip to the end, and it was Dust to Dust, and I'm just thinking this is like a melodic shitfest of everything they've had on the album, just a little more melodic, and I was just kind of, by that point, I really found out what I think about this album. Vocally, lyrically, to go through the rundown of that, the vocals are a bit too raspy for me. They sounded a bit nasty, but not in the good way. It was kind of weird hearing these vocals that just didn't impress me from a vocalist that once impressed me a lot, a once very impressive vocalist. Between Alex's nasty and not in the best way vocals sometimes, and the drummer's lows that were, you know, that just didn't save the album to me, you know, vocally it just didn't matter much to me. That it just, I was more focused on the music, but I'll get to that in a second. Lyrically, in albums, in music, there are basically three things that I feel that people connect to on lyrics in some way or another. First is something that stands out, like, you know, something that's just shouted before a breakdown, or something that's just catchy to you. The second is something that speaks to you personally on an emotional level that you connect to, or something that you just agree with. Lastly, something that just plain interests you, or interests you, whatever, something that you find interesting. And that could be, you know, like, I don't know, example, Whitechapel singing about, you know, Jack the Ripper or something. It's nothing that connects to you on an emotional level, but something you might find interesting, or the Black Dahlia murder, or, you know, maybe not just serial killers, like Misfits singing about Planet of the Apes. You know, just something that's kind of interesting to you and you want to read about it more, you know, something like that. I didn't find solace in any three of those things. I didn't find anything that stood out to me. Aside of in the first track and a couple of parts throughout the album, Alex doing this thing where he has a lot of fluctuation and he, like, puts this weird spin on words, and that's just got annoying after a while. It didn't, like, stick with me. I'm like, oh, well, that's cool. Yeah, like, he would start off a word and you just kind of, like, raise the pitch and lower it, you know. It's kind of like whipping his words around, and it just kind of got annoying. I didn't connect with the lyrics at all. You know, I'll be who I want to be. I don't need Chelsea Grin to tell me that. And nothing interested me, because they didn't sing about anything interesting. It was just be who you are, and, you know, we're not sellouts, or something like that, or like, oh, you know, God sucks. It's like, you know, grow up. Music, I thought some parts were kind of, produced okay, but for the most part, the production's just kind of there. It didn't stand out to me too much. Some parts I thought kind of hit like they should have, but then the rest of the album, it seems that things were a bit flat. But it sounded okay sometimes production-wise to me. But musically it did nothing but piss me off of how Paul Mute-ish and breakdown-ish it was. And I'm not just saying that like, oh, I hate breakdowns, I hate Paul Mutes or whatever. It's just how much they did it got so old so fucking quickly. It's just, oh goodness. There was a lot of that with flashy whether he wrote it or not, because I remember people complaining about the first few songs they released. Oh, Jason Richardson has his hands all over it now, but he said something like he didn't write some of the songs or whatever. Whether he wrote it or not, it's just historically Jason Richardson-y material over top of the same chuggy rhythm, song after song. The only time they mixed it up with that was when they played those ring-out breakdowns that were just, like I said, too slow to headbang to, too slow to be interested in, too slow to just, be interesting. And they did show some signs of a nice melodic, musical style, but ultimately it blended into being something that I just don't care about too much, because it's not creative it's not like they have to be creative. They can do what they want, honestly. It's just my take on the album in terms of what I like and what I don't like, because, everyone has their own opinion. I just don't see it as being that creative, like, oh, well, you can put a lead over top of a breakdown and go like doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, which they all were. It's not like it was any type of branching out through genres. It was just all, breakdown and like doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, whatever stuff over top of it. And the drummer, I barely heard him play anything but rhythm stuff, following the rhythm, and it's just very... Yeah, just very lackluster, very disappointing, and, it's only disappointing because I saw some talent in this band. I know this band has talent. I see some clips, some little shiny things in the sand of hope in this, and I'm like, yeah, and when it builds up, but then that's the thing. It builds up, but it just goes to a breakdown. That's like the message of it, of this album.
Well, yeah. I listened to this album multiple times, and I never finished it, not even once. And that's one thing about this album. Why is it 15 songs long? It's kind of, I don't know why, but I know when Jason Richardson was with Born of Osiris and they put out the Discovery, that was 15 tracks long. That was 15 tracks long, and I thought that was way too much as I liked that album. And I'm like, why? 15 songs of nothing but breakdown. That's what they should have just named this album, because literally, I listened to this album the first time, I'm like, man, I really just don't like this. I can't get into this at all. And I'm like, I wonder, I haven't listened to Chelsea Grin in a while. And I went back and listened to, the majority of My Damnation and,
Desolation of Eden.
Yeah, Desolation of Eden, and I listened to the Evolve EP, and I was like, this shit's actually still good. I still enjoy listening to this. And then I tried to listen to their album again, and I couldn't. It bothers me. There is nothing on here that really catches me. It really just holds you, because it's all so much of the same, and it's so I'm trying not to make comparisons to when Jason Richardson was with Born of Osiris, but the style is exactly the same, and it just doesn't work with Chelsea Grin. It just doesn't fit constantly for 15 fucking songs, and it gets annoying.
One thing with that also, I feel like Alex as a vocalist shined a lot better, and he stood out a lot more without this.
I completely agree, because I was listening to My Damnation and I'm just like, man, Alex, he just sounds fantastic on this album, you know? I take songs such as Calling in Silence or My Last Breath or the title track. I don't care. There's a lot of really catchy rhythms on there, really catchy vocal patterns, and just he sounds great. There's variety on every single song on that album. And I know a lot of people say otherwise, but then they cream over this band now that Jason Richardson's with them, and I'm just like, why? Like, I just don't see it. It's such a stylistic shift that doesn't work for Chelsea Grin, in my opinion. And this is from someone that grew up with this band, dude. But no, I mean, like, I've been listening to this band for a long time before, and it just doesn't seem to work for me, at least. And I just don't like it. And that's the weird thing about this album, is I feel that Jason Richardson doesn't even shine that much. Like, there wasn't a lot of moments on here where I was just like, dude, that's a fucking sick sweep. That's a sick solo. Like, nothing really stood out to me the whole time because it sounded all the same. And it just bothers me. And I think another reason, Alex Kohler sounds okay. I feel he didn't really change too much compared to how the whole band changed as a whole. But I think it's the production on why he just doesn't stand out as much. He doesn't really have that same feeling that he had on My Damnation. And the production sounds so fucking fake. It just sounds so computerized and so... It's as thick as a fucking piece of paper. And it just, like, right from the first note, you know, they're like, dun, 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 dun. And I'm just like, where is that big, bulky sound that they used to have where it just felt like 4,000 amps fucking you in the face? It sounds so computerized and fake anymore. And I hate how bands are doing that. And it's mostly, I feel, these, like, metalcore, deathcore bands that feel that they have to completely change their sound to sound so fake anymore. And you don't have to. And that's the thing about this album. I feel there's no bottom, there's no middle to this album. It's these high ends and it just goes nowhere. And the whole time. And it's just like one fucking breakdown train that never ends. And it's just this fucking train, choo-choo train, just keeps fucking going. And it's like, bro.
Choo-choo.
It's like, bro, you missed my stop. Haha. That made no sense. But still, it's just... This is a disappointing album. I'm not saying that just to say it. I mean, some people might really dig this shit. And that's cool. But it's just... I don't know. And even then, I went back and listened to the Evolve EP because that's when they kind of started to switch a little bit to where they were now. And even then, I could still get into it. Like, I listened to Lilith and Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and I'm like, man, there's some riffs here, and Jason Richardson stands out. Alex Kohler still sounds fantastic. This band's going to be putting out a beast next album, and I'm like, yes, this is cool. But then the more songs they released for this album, the more and more disappointed I knew this album was going to lead me. Why they put out Angels Shall Pray, Demons Shall Sin, whatever it is, as like technically the second song, but the first one for when they announced the full album release date, title, all that, is beyond me, because there are way better songs on this album than that one, and that one's just like, what does that song do? It doesn't do anything. It's like, literally one breakdown the entire time.
It's like just Morse code, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like, angels shall pray, and he does that thing that I just hate, and it's just...
the old-fashioned Amir build-up.
Yeah, and it's just... I don't know. It's just not there. The riffs aren't there. Actually, the riffs really aren't there. If you call breakdowns if you say there's riffs on here, that's funny. And every once in a while, when there actually is a riff, I'm like, all right, this is going to be cool. Such as I think it's the track right after the instrumental. I'm just like, fuck yeah, all right, this is a cool riff. It's like, and I'm like, fuck, this is a cool riff. And then what happens after that, you can probably guess. There's just not, this album goes nowhere. I feel it's just, this band is lost anymore and just lost with how they are. And they just kind of have forgotten. I know bands evolve sometimes, the bands change, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And in this case, I feel they're actually going in the wrong direction.
Like, they may like it as a band, but don't, as listeners, you almost feel like, even though they might like it, this is the stuff they might like, you just can't help but feel, with what Tyler said, definitely, I do agree, but sometimes it has an effect with like a breakdown or something, might make it feel different, but production sounding more computerized, it just sounds like they're trying to fit in a way. Even though it may not be what they're trying to do, it just very much so seems like that, with so many bands going in that direction and just completely, remodeling who they are.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's just, there's no standout track to me on here. I mean, Waste Away is pretty cool. I mean, there's a couple here and there, and I'm like, okay, this is not bad, but then it's just some songs which are so boring and awful, and I don't know. There's just no standout tracks here like there were on their past releases.
I mean,
And that's something that hurts.
Yeah, they're really just turning one of those stupid fucking bands that just go out and tell their crowd to jump up and down, like, jump, jump, jump. I know, once they start touring in support of this album, you go out to a show, they're going to tell you to jump during the songs. That's all you fucking can do.
Yeah. So, I mean, as a whole, I'm disappointed with this. I mean, this band has potential, and it's just not there. And I'm not going to cream over this just because Jason Richardson's in the band, because, quite honestly, I think he's ruined this band.
Yeah. I mean, historically, you can go through, like, metal bands or rock bands, the well-known bands that people will say, like, oh, you look back at, like, Maiden when Bruce Dickinson left, they weren't as good then, but you can look at a band now, like Chelsea Grin, and say when Michael left and Andrew left, the guitarist and drummer that were there on My Damnation, when they left, Chelsea Grin, they weren't as good, so.
Yeah.
But what's the verdict?
The verdict for me is a fucking 5 out of 10. And
Really?
That's
generous.
That's a very generous 5 out of 10, because I mean, there's a couple moments on here that can get you going. Oh yeah, but then as a whole, it's just very boring. It's way too long. It just doesn't sound great. Personal opinion, of course.
It is pretty long for everything that it is. I would say without any stylistic branching out to like any other genre, it is what it is, and you get one sort of very conservative sound on this. I would give it a 3.5 out of 10, just because I don't see very many non-Chelsea Grin fans that don't suck off of Jason Richardson's teeth being brought in by this. I definitely see it driving people like me that have been on the fence with this band somewhat since they started releasing songs from this album, maybe a little bit before, when I just started to lose interest because I kind of saw them going in a different direction. But it definitely drives someone like myself over the fence, and the fence side that I land on is that this is the band that I used to be into. So 3.5.
Yeah. This album review is kind of long, kind of like this album.
Yeah.
But we had a lot to say. So make sure you check this album out if you want. That's our thoughts on it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And I don't know.
Yeah, it's all opinion
Check
and
the album too.
stuff.
Yep. I'm gonna go say hi to Keith.
Vote no on
LeBron James is going to Cleveland.
Yeah, fuck, I was gonna say something about that.